great thing about scary movies is that they come in so many different forms. There's more than one way to scare the viewers when it comes to horror films, but one of the most successful subgenres of horror that seems to always terrify the living hell out of me at least is the found footage horror subgenre. Even with the most simplistic premise, any found footage horror film can deliver more scares than most subgenres out there. Personally, I think that's the case for two reasons. One, found footage films always felt more realistic, and two, they always felt more personal. You're watching the film from the perspective of the character, which in a way sort of puts you into the shoes of the characters themselves. And ever since the found footage subgenre was made popular by the Blair Witch Project, we've seen it change and adapt over the years with modern technology. From films that feature characters wearing GoPros to an entire movie taking place on a Zoom call, the found footage subgenre is bigger than just a character walking around with a camera nowadays. But on this episode of Nerd Space, we take a look at some of the scariest and creepiest found footage horror films of all time. You know, the ones that really keep you up at night after the credits roll. Before we get started though, let's establish a few ground rules. Firstly, found footage films come in many different forms, so basically as long as it applies to this video, I'm going to include it. That includes stuff like mockumentaries, a Zoom call, or even found footage itself. It all applies to today's list. Also, as always with my list, I'm only including one entry per franchise. Make sense? Anyway, my name is Ruben with Nerd Space Horror, and this is my top 10 creepiest found footage horror films of all time. Let's get it. Number 10, The Blair Witch Project. While The Blair Witch Project may not have been the first found footage horror film, it definitely was the movie that put the subgenre on the map. For that reason, it feels like a crime to put the grandfather of found footage horror films at number 10. But considering this list is for the creepiest films, not the most iconic, I can't see myself putting it above any other movie on today's list. The Blair Witch Project follows three friends as they head into the woods to do a documentary about a local urban legend. What follows is a string of disturbing events, from piles of stones being left outside of their tent to creepy sounds being heard at night. Overall, a majority of the scare factor of this movie comes from two key traits. One, fear of the unknown. Unlike most horror films, Blair Witch doesn't exactly show you any of the horrors that are hunting the main characters. Instead, it challenges you to use your imagination as you go through the same weird events as the characters do. However, the biggest scare factor of the Blair Witch Project comes from the realism of the film. See, at the time of its release, it wasn't as simple to look things up on the internet as it is now. So the Blair Witch Project for the longest time was viewed as real to a lot of people. So while watching the film nowadays for the first time might not seem as terrifying as people make it out to be, keep in mind that in a time where a lot of people saw this as real footage, this movie horrified a lot of us back in the 90s. Number 9, The Visit. Honestly, out of every film on this list, The Visit feels the least like a found footage movie. This is mostly due to the fact that despite the entire movie being filmed from the perspective of multiple video cameras, the quality of the videos are extremely clear. Actually, the quality is so good and perfectly balanced that it almost feels unrealistic to a certain degree. So until I actually rewatched this movie recently, I totally forgot that it was even a found footage film. Despite The Visit feeling slightly less personal and realistic compared to other films within this subgenre, there are still moments that stand out enough to make The Visit one of the creepiest found footage horror films out there.
Here I come.
The hide and seek sequence under the house, for example, still haunts my dreams, and some of the late night footage with the grandma was extremely disturbing. However, I have to say that the best moment of the film comes from the reveal of the twist. I won't spoil it just in case you haven't watched it, but I'll just say this. I had goosebumps during that reveal, no lie. Overall, The Visit does have some comedic moments that makes the movie feel less scary, but the creepy moments that are scattered throughout the film are enough to earn it a spot on today's list. Number 8, As Above, So Below. Personally, this movie is my favorite found footage horror film of all time. It might not be as scary as some of the other entries above it, but the interesting concept of the film itself keeps it feeling fresh compared to other found footage horror movies. As Above, So Below follows 6 people as they travel underground to investigate the catacombs beneath Paris in search of the Philosopher's Stone. On top of the religious and supernatural vibe of the film, which adds its own layer of fear, probably the most terrifying element of the movie is the feeling of being trapped in small caves that are almost 1,000 feet beneath the surface. What's even more impressive about this film is that a majority of the movie was filmed in the actual catacombs themselves, with most of the lighting for the footage coming from the actors' headlights. This type of filming created a more realistic setting for the movie, despite it eventually leading into a supernatural film that forced each character to face their greatest fears and regrets. From playing on our fear of tight places during the scene where Benji finds himself stuck on a pile of bones, to typical jump scares by demonic creatures as the characters race through the dark catacombs. As above, so below is easily one of the creepiest of the subgenre.
Dad! Where are you?
Number 7, Wreck. Wreck and Quarantine are basically the same movie, with Wreck being the original foreign film and honestly the superior version of the two films. Regardless, both movies are phenomenal found footage horror flicks that find a group of civilians trapped inside an apartment building as a viral outbreak occurs. This film essentially puts George Romero to shame when comparing it to his Living Dead found footage horror film Diary of the Dead. Anyway, as the American title suggests, the residents of the apartment, a reporter and her cameraman, and some firefighters and cops find themselves quarantined in this building as the infected residents begin to turn into zombies and attack the remaining survivors. Wreck, the original foreign film that Quarantine is based on, allows more time to connect with the characters, allowing the viewers to grow more attached to each character. However, both are filled with terrifying jump scares, creepy ass moments, and much more in one of the scariest zombie films I've ever seen. Number 6, Paranormal Activity. Of course, we have to include Paranormal Activity on this list, considering that this movie is what made Blumhouse the juggernauts of horror that they are today. Personally, I enjoy the second movie a little more, but I feel like most would say that the first movie is a little scarier, and I would mostly agree. Regardless of which Paranormal Activity movie you think is the scariest, they all are pretty similar to each other, especially the first 4 films. Basically, paranormal events begin to happen to a family. Family begins to record these said paranormal events. Things get worse and shit hits the fan in the final act of each movie. The Paranormal Activity series is the king of two things: jump scares and atmospheric horror. The unsettling, quiet, and slow buildup during each film before things get real bad always makes me nervous. I swear, each time it's night, I get goosebumps and my heart starts racing, wondering what's going to happen this night. Personally, the moment that stuck with me all of these years is the theatrical ending of the first movie. Fuck you, Katie. I hope you guys are happy. I just put myself through that fucking scene again just to add that clip to this video. Overall, the franchise dominated the found footage subgenre for years before it started to go downhill after the third film. So for this entry, how about just putting whatever Paranormal Activity film you think is the scariest? As a matter of fact, comment down below and let me know which film of this iconic series is the most terrifying to you. Number 5, VHS 2. Similar to Paranormal Activity, the VHS franchise is a massive found footage franchise that has 6 mainline entries and 2 spin-off movies, with another mainline entry slated for sometime this year. These films are definitely some of the most unique found footage horror films out there. Each VHS movie is actually an anthology series that's full of multiple different shorts, each with their own unique, strange, and disturbing horror flicks. Honestly speaking, I've heard multiple things regarding each VHS film about which one is actually the scariest. For me, while the first film has one of the scariest videotapes in the form of a succubus inside a hotel room, it's the second film that takes the cake for me. Mainly because almost every single videotape in the second movie is fucking terrifying in their own way. Sure, the zombie one is pretty cool and definitely less scary, but you can't say that the rest of the tapes in the movie are as mellow as that one is. The first tape, in my opinion, the scariest of the film, follows a guy that has a cyborg-like camera eye in which he is able to see ghosts. Another tape follows a group of kids as they are attacked by aliens. Number 4, Host. While there have been plenty of found footage horror films that have explored the webcam side of the subgenre, only 2 of them really stand out as being the best of this unique take on found footage movies: Unfriended and Host. As you can see, I decided to include Host on today's list instead of Unfriended for a few reasons. The biggest one though is the most obvious. Unfriended just isn't as scary in my opinion. Most of the kills and terrifying moments of that movie are off screen, and the big focus of Unfriended is on the secrets between the friend group. Host, on the other hand, is far more terrifying and is easily one of the scariest found footage horror films out there. The movie follows 6 friends as they join a Zoom call during COVID. Looking for something to do, they decide to do an online seance. After doing the seance, one of the friends accidentally summons a demonic spirit and all hell breaks loose as each of the friends begin to experience some truly horrifying shit. Who knew Zoom and Skype could be so damn terrifying? Number 3, Grave Encounters. Asylums in horror movies are always terrifying, but when you add them to the found footage subgenre, then shit gets real fast. Now, Grave Encounters may not be the scariest found footage horror film that's set inside of an asylum, as you'll see later on with today's list, but it's pretty damn close. The film follows a team of paranormal investigators that are essentially making their own TV show in which they search for ghosts in different haunted locations. On their final episode, the team heads into an abandoned asylum in which they intend to remain inside of this asylum all night. However, things take a turn for the worse when the team realizes that the asylum is actually haunted, and now they must find a way to survive the nightmares around each corner of this asylum. The disturbing design of the ghosts of Grave Encounters are outright terrifying, and while the film does rely a lot on jump scares, it does it better than most horror movies out there.
Who are you? How come you're in here?
Add that to the horrifying setting of the asylum itself, and you have one of the most terrifying found footage horror films ever created. It does have a sequel, but in my opinion, it's a major step down, and the twist kind of ruins the film. Still, both films are a must-watch for fans of horror. Number 2, House LLC. House is part of another found footage horror franchise that mostly centers around the Abaddon Hotel, but let's be absolutely real for a second. None of the sequels come close to being as scary as that first movie. The first House movie follows a group of friends as they turn an abandoned hotel into a haunted house. During the opening night of House, 15 people end up dead. The media covers everything up, but thanks to one of the survivors coming to a team doing a documentary on the events of House, footage is recovered from the staff recordings that follow the events leading up to the House massacre. Thanks to the footage recovered, it seems that the staff was actually experiencing terrifying hauntings leading up to opening night of House. We all know that haunted houses are pretty terrifying on their own, but when you throw into the mix moving mannequins, demonic creatures, and terrifying clowns, you get one hell of a haunted house experience in House LLC. Pun intended.
Holy shit. Holy shit. Holy shit.
Yep, the scariest found footage horror film of all time is Gonjiam, Haunted Asylum. Holy shit, this movie is terrifying. Remember when I was talking about Grave Encounters and how it wasn't the scariest found footage horror film that took place inside of an asylum? Well, that's because this movie is. With a very similar premise as Grave Encounter, this film follows a group of paranormal investigators as they investigate one of the world's creepiest real-life locations in the world. Yeah, that's right, this asylum actually exists, although a lot of the rumors and legends about this place aren't exactly true. Regardless, this team breaks into the asylum in the middle of the night to live stream their experience within this haunted location. What starts off as a gimmick to fake ghosts in order to get more views ultimately becomes a matter of life and death as the crew slowly realize that the asylum is actually haunted and full of angry ghosts. For some reason, Asian horror films put every American horror film to shame, and that is perfectly shown here in this movie. As always, I'll avoid spoilers, but one of the most terrifying moments of the film is this demonic-like girl muttering a bunch of random words. Another element of this film that helps this found footage horror film stand out in the subgenre is the technology used by the characters in the film. See, while most found footage horror films follow characters holding cameras, Gonjiam, Haunted Asylum puts cameras around the asylum while also putting a double-sided GoPro on each character. This way we can see behind each character, their facial expression, and even their perspective as well throughout the film. It was a brilliant feature in this movie that helped elevate the horror experience. But that does it for this episode of Nerd Space Horror. Hit up the comments and let me know what you think of my list. Is Gonjiam, Haunted Asylum the scariest found footage horror film out there, or is there another movie that deserves that title? Also, don't forget to let me know any movies that didn't make my list. Trust me, I know there are a lot of them out there that I didn't include on today's list, but I could only fit 10. So be sure to hit up the comments and let me know what found footage horror film do you think is the creepiest movie. Anyway, if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe to my channel if you love horror movies. Also, leave a like on this video if you enjoyed today's topic. But thanks for watching, and as always, I'll catch you guys on the next episode of Nerd Space Horror. Take care.